Hi, everybody. Welcome to South by Southwest, from Riffs to Bits. This is an afternoon discussion with, first of all, James Williamson of the Stooges. Give it up. And Mr. Buzz from the Melvins on hand. I'm Jack Bulwer. Thank you so much for coming. We also want to thank IEEE for making this possible this afternoon. And our hearts go out to those who were injured a few days ago in the accident. You can donate. There's a South by Southwest Cares Fund. Just go online and Google it and show your support. So let's jump right in. We have a lot to do. So these are slides. Oh, that's us. You already know who we are. Okay, there we are. That's a nice shot, Buzz.
It is nice.
Like,
yeah.
Calming.
What? Yeah.
It's very calming. Okay, there's James Williamson. Look at that guitar. Beautiful. Okay, so this is James Williamson today as a member of the Stooges. Who's this guy? I think I bought pot from him once in the 1970s.
Yeah, that's me probably 15, 16 years old, and that shot is down at Padre Island. I don't know, those of you here from Texas know about Padre
there we go.
Island, you know?
There's a few.
That's spring break, right? And so anyway, we used to go, I have a lot of relatives in Texas, and we used to meet up and go down to Padre and hang out,
And this is your spring break? Is that what you're saying?
more or less. You can see there's not much going on in that neighborhood that we're staying in, but yeah, I was kind of 15, 16.
All right. So you were playing guitar pretty early. This is This is a group of guys you played with.
Yeah, that was my first band. We called it The Chosen Few. And that guy, well, I don't know if you can see him in this shot, but up in the very top is the singer, Scott Richardson, who ended up, forming another band, SRC, in Ann Arbor a little later on. But anyway, this is us with me coming back from juvie on a weekend, actually. And they had me in this, they got this car ad, and that's what this shot is. Yeah, so
There's a car ad?
Yeah, you can't see the car in this picture for some reason, but that model there in the green is on a ladder, and there's a car right between she and I. I'm down in the lower right-hand corner, and I've got my white Fender Jaguar, which is my first electric guitar.
And so this was an ad in Ann Arbor for like one of the car companies there?
Yeah, this is the Motor City, so right. You had, I forget what the model of the car was. I'd be able to tell you if I could see it. Right.
What kind of music did you play?
We mostly played covers of, the Rolling Stones and Them, all the usual suspects from that era. But that was, there weren't any original tunes there, but I started to write original tunes right about this time.
Well, it's interesting that they thought it was a good idea to use juvenile delinquents to sell their cars.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Detroit, indeed.
It's that rough-hewn quality they were looking for, I guess.
Well, when do you get out? We'll do the photo shoot then. Not exactly chewing gum in class.
Okay, well, so around the same time in Ann Arbor, there was a band called the Psychedelic Stooges that were starting to play around, and this is what they look like. No, sorry, that's not the right slide. There they are. This is sort of the Stooges. I think this is probably not the Psychedelic Stooges.
No, this is later when they kind of dropped the psychedelic part. But the Psychedelic Stooges was the first band that they created. The Ashton brothers and Iggy, and Dave Alexander was the bass player. And what they did was Iggy had been a drummer in a blues band, a really good drummer in a really good blues band named the Prime Movers. And so, in fact, those of you who are guitar players might be familiar with Dan Erlewine, who's a famous luthier now. but he was the guitar player in the Prime Movers. And anyway, they all got sick of that stuff and they wanted to form their own band. Only thing was Ronnie Ashton, the bass player at that time, was the only guy who actually could play an instrument. And Iggy wanted to be a singer, but he'd never been a singer before, and the bass player had never played anything. And Scott Ashton, the drummer, had to learn to play the drums from Iggy. So they ginned it all up in a house that they got together and practiced a lot for a long time. I mean, I think they were, I remember going over there and hearing them at various different stages, and they were really bad when they started, and then they got a little bit better, but they're, just to kind of give you a visual, their original idea, they took a lot of acid. And so their original idea for the Psychedelic Stooges was Iggy on Osterizer, the blender with microphone going in and out, and also he also played the vacuum cleaner. And then Scott Ashton, the drummer, had a couple of, I don't know, maybe 50-gallon steel drums, steel barrels that he would pound with mallets. And Ronnie would play guitar, and Dave would play the bass. And so these guys were, they would come out there, and this was the era of the happening, so they would go out there and just let it loose. And they were always very good at performing. And so they, you could go see them, and of course everybody's on drugs. And so they're at the Grandy Ballroom, and so it just worked, Now, they were not what you'd call a popular commercial band.
There weren't any singles released from that?
No, but after they got signed, they cleaned up their act a little bit and became a little bit more traditional. And this is a kind of a show, a typical Stooges show you'd see back, after their first album.
Look at those amps. Jesus.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Who had to move all that stuff?
Not me.
Oh. So they recorded 2 albums.
Yeah.
With that lineup, and then how did you get involved? You knew these guys already.
Right. Yes, I did, and so I after graduating high school, I went to 5 different high schools, by the way, and actually my friend from one of them is sitting in the audience today, so I'll talk about that a little later. But I needed to figure out what I was going to do. And I went up to Ann Arbor from Detroit, which was a cooler place to be, as a college town and stuff. And I started living with a couple of guys actually on the road crew, but spent a lot of time hanging out with the band and stuff. And they had by that point kind of added another guitar, which was a roadie really, who wasn't a very good guitar player. And eventually they just decided, you know what? Let's ask James to join because he can actually play, and so so that's how I got in the band.
All right.
Did you want to go to 5 different high schools, or were you told to go to 5 different high schools?
Well, it was yes. I started out by getting kicked out because my hair was too long, and so I was truant, which put me in front of the judge, and then the next thing you know, I'm in juvie, except and they buzz cut my hair, of course, right? And so there I am, and then the next school, they said, okay, well, maybe we should just send him to boarding school or something. So I went to upstate New York, and that's where my friend Michael Adams, who's here, met me, and we formed a band we called the Cobasees, and then I came back from New York, and went to another school in the system, which was in the same system, but it was another school from the first one. And finally, I came back to the first one, and then the principal made a deal with me. He said, if you go to night school and graduate, I'll give you a diploma. So that's how I just go somewhere. Just don't come
We
here.
don't want you here during the day. Come at
Right.
night.
A night when no one can see you.
Yeah. That was right.
So this is you know, you guys are all dolled up here. This is like a, you know, you're like a real show band. Look at all the costumes there.
Yeah. Well, you know, we had actually.
People look a little high, if I don't mind saying.
There certainly was that, but the thing is, you don't have any idea what that smells like in that room, because you know, we were kind of low on the maintenance of our gear, and we only had that one set of costumes, and so you know, they'd pretty much stand up by themselves, and so here we are. You know, we had kind of we were kind of a unglamorous glam band, if you will. And so we had all been over to London, made Raw Power, come back to Hollywood, got our little, you know, outfits and things, and then we broke up with that management team and just started touring endlessly, you know, with the only costumes we had.
Yeah.
So that's us there on a typical night. That's the whiskey.
Here's another. Here is those are pretty high boots, James. Do you want to explain those boots?
Yeah, well, for those who haven't heard this story, that's at Cobo Arena in Detroit. It was our first and only show we did with the main man management, which was the management we had at that time. And like I said, we all came back to Hollywood from London, bought a bunch of custom, you know, outfits and stuff, and I got a custom pair of boots made, but I didn't know anything about boots, which is a typical, you know, Stooges story about everything. But I went to the boot maker and I said, look, I want these boots all the way up the middle of my calves, and you know, put gold snakeskin all up in front of them, and you know, and it took him a long time to do this, and so I only got the boots like 2 weeks before the gig. Tried them on, they fit, but I neglected to understand the principle of boots. Like all women know, you got to have some give in the knee. And so what happened was I got these boots and I couldn't sit down. And so, seriously, and so they had to actually lay me down in the car to get me to the show. And then they took me out of the car and put me up. And I was stuck. You know, I had to play like that, and I couldn't, that was it, man. One time only, the boots. One time only.
One time.
Wow. So let's talk about Raw Power. This is the first record that you made with the Stooges. This was, you know, a classic record. Today, everybody talks about what an influential recording this was. All punk bands, metal bands, any rock and roll band, you know, has studied that record. But you know, the songs Search and Destroy, Gimme Danger, Death Trip, we were talking about earlier. I mean, they were classics that opened up this door to fast, angry, fun rock and roll. But at the time, on the Billboard charts, people were listening to Killing Me Softly with his song, Crocodile Rock, Rocky Mountain High. How did Raw Power fit into that sort of?
It didn't.
Yeah, it didn't.
It didn't.
You know, I think the secret, or maybe it's not a secret, but the core principle by which we existed was within our own little microculture within the band. And we didn't care what anybody thought about us or what anybody thought about our music, or frankly, we didn't just care about anybody really except for ourselves. And so we were self-contained. And so when we made this music, we luckily were able to make the music we wanted to make, because up until that time, you know, we were with the David Bowie organization, and, you know, Bowie is a real toony, sort of poppy guy. And, you know, brilliant, he's made a lot of money and made a lot of good songs, but that wasn't what we were into. And so they wanted David Bowie to produce our record, and we said, no, 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 you know, he's not right for us. And so, so we passed on that. And the lucky part for us was that they got so busy breaking David Bowie in the U.S. that they didn't have enough time to pay any attention to us. And so we got to go in without adult supervision, you know, and make our record. And that's a very important distinction. Now, granted, the record is flawed. You know, it has lots of technical problems that probably wouldn't have been there if somebody, you know, was managing the process. You know, we just kind of, you know, told the poor engineer to do all kinds of things he shouldn't have been doing. And you know, so there's issues, but the songs were good. The songs were solid. We believed in them, and we did them. And you know, of course, you know, we were abject failure with that record. I mean, we thought we were going to be pop stars, and we, like, boom, nothing. And so, you know, I can say now, 40 years later, that we were successful, but it took a really long time.
It took a really long time.
Yeah.
Well, Buzz, what was your memory of finding Raw Power?
Well, first, I have two things. I like the idea that David Bowie would have been the adult on the session.
Yeah.
That's amazing. He's the voice of reason.
Yeah.
You know? That's amazing. We don't want him in there. No way. You know? Oh, it's totally crazy. And it makes sense, kind of, but you know. But the other one is when you did the touring there. I'm really interested. Did you guys play places like Utah, West Virginia? What sort of reactions and what sort of things happened then? I mean, it seems like you'd have been tarred and feathered in some of these places.
Well, we were. I mean, the thing. I don't think we ever played, you know, Kansas City or you know, some of the real remote places. We never got to Montana, for example, but we did play. You know, we played Atlanta. You know, we played Nashville. So we play a lot of, you know, sort of not. And they loved us in the major markets always: New York, L.A., London. You know, they always liked the Stooges. But you start getting out of that, you know, sort of time zone a little bit, or out of that realm, and it got rougher and rougher for us. And you know, if Iggy's your singer, man, you know, it's either going to be really good or it's going to be really bad, you know, because he goes out and confronts the audience. And I'll tell you a story as we get a little further on. But yeah, we before the band broke up, during that period, we toured everywhere, and I call it the Death March, because we just, you know, just one place to the next, and that was about the last 2 years of that lineup.
Let's see. This is I think this is of you during that time.
Yeah.
Do you hang out in cemeteries a lot back then? Or?
Well, you know, there was.
Whose tombstone is that?
I think it's Bessie is her name. This is in London at a cemetery, and the guy that took this picture is named Byron Newman, and it was his idea to go to the cemetery because I guess I looked half dead anyway. His claim to fame, though, is he's a very famous Playboy photographer. So he's been a huge success as a photographer. When he did some of these pictures with me, a great guy. I just saw him not long ago in London. He's retired now, but
Playboy photographer. Okay, and this is another shot of you guys live. This was probably '74.
yeah, this is during that touring part I was just talking about, Buzz. You know, where we, I think Iggy's changed his outfit there, but I've still got the same one.
No boots, though.
No boots.
No boots.
You should have just cut them off.
No boots. So after this sort of Death March tour, the band ends up in L.A. and what happens? What happens then? It's like you've gone through a bunch of managers. You thought you recorded a really great record, which it is, but what happens there?
Well, I mean, that's when the Death March starts. I mean, that's where we go through a succession of management hands and you know, are mistreated by many managers, and the the thing was we would tour, just hand to mouth, and sometimes not even that, and so it was pretty tough. But yeah, we went through like about 2 years of that, and ultimately what happened was we had a New York management crew that would just book us, if there was something nearby, book us in there. They didn't necessarily know what it was. And what they did was they booked us into a biker bar in Detroit called the Rock and Roll Farm. And so we go to play the gig, and there's a lot of nearby, Detroit people who were fans and stuff that came to that show, but the bar is mostly bikers. And so, here we come out doing our set, hard charge and set, and Iggy gets out in the audience and saddles up to this biker leaning up against the rail of a mirrored wall, and Iggy's in his face, and the guy just hauls off and cold cocks him, and so boom, and we can't see, the place is filled with people, and all we know is there's no more vocal. The vocal's gone. For about 10 minutes we're playing, no vocal, and so something's wrong. And we realized that what had happened, and we were lucky to get out of there alive. We didn't get paid for that show. And
Oh, you paid though.
yeah, we paid. And so then what happened was the next day, in typical fashion, Iggy gets on the radio and starts, taunting these guys, and calling them assholes and, all this kind of stuff. And so what do? They show up at the next gig, which is the Michigan Palace. And so those of you who have heard that record know you hear bottles breaking, and, I had cameras whizzing by my ear, and, there was all hell broke loose in there. And that was those guys with their buddies and everything came back to the gig. But of course, we were brilliant, and we would just stand up there and, tell them to, bring it on. Because it is pretty hard to peg a beer bottle from, 30 feet away and hit somebody, unless you get lucky, and luckily they didn't. So.
Did you get paid for that show?
We did. We got paid. We got paid for that show. We did.
Oh, man.
But that was the end of the band. So after that, we just said, you know what? Screw this. Nobody had any stomach for it.
And that record's an excellent testament to an end of a band. It's amazing.
Metallic KO.
Yeah.
Right. And the cover of the album is Iggy Unconscious, right?
No, he frequently, it's just him on the floor. He,
Oh, okay.
he frequently
That was a
would
big
be
myth
on the
that
floor.
Looking
urban
unconscious.
Yeah,
looking
no,
unconscious.
that was just him laying on the floor during a set.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get confused that unconscious sometimes.
It's a little different, not much.
And so what happens after the band breaks up?
Well, then so this is actually a little later on. This is me producing New Values, which is during the Iggy solo period.
Right.
But before that, let me lead up to that. We tried. We first thought that Rocket Records, Elton John's label, wanted to pick us up for a new album, and then we thought, okay, well, maybe that's not going to work. But we thought our buddy Ben Edmonds was a writer at that time, and he thought we needed more professional demos in order to get a record deal. So he hooked us up with his buddy Jimmy Webb, the Wichita Linesman and MacArthur Park, and all great songwriter, the greatest. Anyway, he had a studio at his place, on his property, and he said, sure, yeah, they can use it, but the deal is that you have to give my brother a bag of weed every day, and he'll be your engineer. And so
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
You don't want to be late with the weed.
No, because then nothing gets recorded.
Nothing gets recorded.
Yeah. So we did, you know, I mean, that was in those days, it was $5 for a bag of weed. So it was not a big expense for us. And so we recorded up there. A lot of people, not the Ashton brothers had gone back to Detroit. So I had Scotty Thurston, I had the Sales brothers, I had a whole bunch of different people playing the tunes, but those tracks later would become Kill City. And so we recorded the demos. We still didn't get a record deal, but so once that was done, and we were disappointed yet once again, I think at that point David Bowie came and took Iggy under his wing and took him on a tour with him. So he went to Europe, and they did The Idiot and a couple things like that. And then Ig came back, and he wanted to do a new album, which later became New Values. And so I was the producer on that album, and that's what this picture is right here.
But not long, or maybe during the same time, you also worked as an engineer for a variety of records at Paramount.
Yes, I had, so Kill City is not happening. And so I got to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up, because, obviously music, the guitar deal isn't working too well. And so I decided, okay, well, I kind of recorded a couple albums now. I have some idea what's going on. So I got a job at Paramount Studios in LA. And I learned a lot, and I got to do a lot of stuff, but the day-to-day, I mean, here's my takeaway as why I never became a recording audio engineer, is because to me, there's only one thing worse than playing in a band with guys you don't like, which is awful, you can't do it. But that's recording bands you don't like every single day of your life, I mean, and this is the disco era. So it's like, screw this. And,
Oh, yeah.
It's
So you were recording disco records.
Yeah, I was recording disco records. And there were some damn good players and everything, but it was like, really?
Oh, well.
And so I couldn't do it. So, yeah. But anyway, I did, after that, I produced a record, and I did, half a record beyond that.
What disco records did you work
I
on?
was just going to say, was it like the fifth of Beethoven?
No,
No, I don't think you'd ever know, because it was like a disco machine in those days. Every producer came in with their set of people and would just, boom, 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 do the tracks, and it was a little bit like hip hop's, become,
Is that was at Paramount Studios? Is that the one on Santa Monica?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still there. But
That was actually where Jimi Hendrix did one of his records.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a
that.
good
It's amazing.
studio. I had a lot of good times there, but recording disco was not one of them.
No, you'd want to kill everybody there.
Yeah.
Pretty much,
Yeah. No, it just seems like, I remember in the 70s when the Stooges were playing, disco sucks was sort of the slogan you'd see on T-shirts from the rock and roll sort of community. And there you are. You're in the belly of the beast.
Yeah, well, you gotta eat. So anyway, I like I say, I did this one and a half of another solo album that didn't end well with Ig, and then
Soldier?
Soldier, yeah.
I think that record's amazing. How did it end?
Well, I went, the story of my life. I did this album. The record company they thought if they put James Williamson together with Iggy equals punk, and first of all, we don't care about punk. And so the album I made was the album that I thought was good. And so, but the A&R guy at Arista, which was a record label, didn't want that. They wanted punk. Now, I'm very proud of this album, and I think it stands up well today. But anyway, so then the next thing that happened is after this record, they wanted to, okay, maybe if we put these guys in the UK and hire a bunch of punk musicians, that'll equal punk. And so I foolishly accepted to produce that album and got over there and they put us in a studio up in Wales. And I got over there, and I just couldn't stand the musicians. And I was very unhappy because the songwriting, there was not enough time for the songwriting, and so the material, the content was not what I wanted it to be. And so anyway, long and the short is we all got on each other's nerves and ended up, I just left.
How much of that record did you record?
I recorded all the basic tracks. But I got very, like I said, I got very disillusioned with it, so I tried to occupy my interest by doing lots of technical things, like in those days, today you think 48 tracks is nothing, but in those days 48 tracks meant you had to have 2 machines that were synced up with something called a SMPTE time code, and this was wild stuff, and the Stooges are, well, this wasn't the Stooges, but Iggy's a little bit of a Luddite. He oh my God, why are you doing that? Kind of a thing. So anyway, it just didn't work for me. And I think they're, like you say, they made a decent album out of it.
I think some of those songs are great. I always wondered about that because I knew that was the case, but I never knew what the actual story was.
Yeah. Some projects you shouldn't do.
So what happened after this period? What was going through your mind? The music industry was sort of disillusioning to you, maybe, or you've had some experiences engineering records you don't like, producing records that were uncomfortable. What do? You're kind of at a point of reckoning in your life.
Yeah. By this time, actually, even this period, I had already found what I wanted to do, which was I got inspired. Working at a recording studio, you get around electronics a lot. And so I had sort of figured out I kind of liked that, and I was really inspired in going to an electronics store, because you had, in those days, you had to make a pay TV decoder box, to get free channels. And so anyway, I was at the electronics store, and I saw this man and his son messing around with this box, and it turned out it was one of the original personal computers. I think it was called an MSI 8080 in those days, and it had like front panel switches that you had to boot the thing up in binary in order to to work it. But I mean, it was like, to me, it was like, oh my God, this is cool. And so I started, it was exciting to me in a way that rock and roll no longer was. And
Just
so
like the late 70s?
Yeah, this is the late 70s, and so I decided, okay, I want to do that. And so I went to engineering school, and so I was in engineering school when I did this record for him, and so I was kind of doing both things, and I really enjoyed that, but I wanted to really get away from rock and roll and more into the engineering world.
And where was the school?
Cal Poly Pomona.
So they were still in Southern California.
Yeah, it's out in Claremont, which is an area with the Claremont colleges. There's quite a few schools out there.
So you graduated from this school.
Yeah.
And what's your next move? You're not going to play in bands anymore.
Right. No, I got hired right out of school into the Silicon Valley, and I've been there ever since. I felt like, wow, I mean, this was one of those jobs I was getting paid to do what I liked to do. I couldn't believe they were paying me. And I was really very, very stimulating. I have no regrets about that. I spent a career, 30-year career around people who, invented the personal computer, who invented the internet, and, made it all happen. And I was there, So it's been great.
Let's look at, this is,
There you go.
here you are. And
Post-Stooges.
post-Stooges.
Well,
This is what happens to Stooges.
You emerged out of the Stooges. And that's amazing.
When was this taken?
Maybe not that long ago, maybe about 12, 15 years ago.
So did the people you were working around have any idea about?
No, no. The thing is that the Silicon Valley has the highest concentration of people with Asperger's in the nation.
Oh, man.
And so it's true. No, it's true. And so the type of people that are there, I mean, they wouldn't, if I told them, they wouldn't know who the Stooges were. You know, not until fairly recently, or the end of my career there, did the internet catch up with me. So I was kind of under the radar for sure, and people didn't even know how to reach me. And then slowly, writers started, you know, getting my number somehow, and I'd get a phone call, and at first I wouldn't talk to them, but then finally I started talking to them, and you know, so I eventually the internet caught up with me, and I got you know, exposed.
Well,
So did you play guitar during this period? Did you have friends that you played in a garage?
No, not at all. I set the guitar down because it was way too much of a. It was always an emotional outlet for me, and I felt like I can't do both things. I've got to do one or the other. So I put it down.
How long did you?
For like 35 years.
You didn't play guitar for 35 years.
But you kept your guitar.
But I kept my
You
guitar.
kept
Well, no, actually, I gave my guitar to Scotty Thurston, who's with the Petty Band now, but he kept it all those years. And then when I came back to
The
play
red one.
again, then he gave it back to me.
Yeah.
So,
That's nice of him.
so in 2009, Ron Ashton, who is the guitarist for the original Stooges, has a heart attack and passes away, and you get a phone call from Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
happened?
I mean, I'm working at Sony, you know, and I'm also, you know, doing a lot of standards work for the IEEE and lots of other organizations, and you know, it's kind of, Sony's not immune to the economic situation that started happening back then, and so they started handing out the early retirement packages, and there was one on the table when that call came in. And so I was looking at it anyway, independent of all that. But I said, and at first I told Iggy, no, you know, I mean, really, I mean, you haven't played guitar in 35 years, you're going to go out and tour the world, you know, and I'm like thinking, I don't really think I can do this. And so I told him no. But then I started thinking about it, and the truth is, the honest to God truth is, I felt like, you know, I go back so far with those guys into my 20s, and so I felt like I kind of owed them to do it, because they couldn't really, you can't really call yourself the Stooges if you don't have any Stooges in the band, right? So they kind of needed another Stooge, and
Another Stooge.
So I did. I came back and I decided I was going to take the package, and so I could do it. I was free, you know. I just said, what the hell, you know. So luckily I didn't. I had like, you know, I think I resigned in March, and then I had until probably October before our first gig was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, for 40,000 people. So I got to, you know, practice a whole bunch. And it was okay, you know. Luckily they're my songs, you know. It's my style. I could do it.
Did you have to sort of make a room in your house into a jam room now that wasn't before?
No, I mean, I just played the guitar, but I had a rehearsal room and stuff, and I had some guys, local guys, to help me rehearse. So I got it together, and yeah, the thing was, Sony didn't want me to leave, so then they hired me as a consultant. So now I have two jobs. I'm like Spider-Man, you know. I've got, you know, the standards gig, and then I got the Stooges at night, you know. So it was kind of wild for a while, but anyway, I survived.
The ultimate retirement job.
Yeah, right.
It really is. It's everybody's
How often
dream.
does that happen? Most people retire and then work at somewhere like Starbucks. They don't go to Brazil and play to 40,000 people. That's probably more people than you'd played to in your entire career before that at one gig.
By far.
Yeah.
Add it up. You know?
It was. It was every person who saw the original Stooges in one room.
Probably more. You know?
Probably more. Well,
That's
let's
amazing.
see.
That's amazing.
This is the reconstituted Stooges right here.
Yeah, yeah, there we are.
And how did the first gig go? 40,000 people. You weren't nervous at all, were you?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, the thing is, the thing is with this band, I mean, you know, we start and the fur starts flying, and so if you lose your concentration, if you snooze, you're screwed. You're lost. And so I really didn't have enough time to be too scared because you know, there's flying mic stands and, you know, stuff's going on up there, and so yeah, no, I was just trying to, you know, get through the set, frankly. But it sounded pretty good. Yeah.
So how has your relationship with Iggy changed over the years? I mean, you know, you could argue that both of you have done some of your best work when you are collaborating together.
Yeah.
And you didn't collaborate with him for many years. He did his own thing. You guys didn't really talk much. But now you're touring together. You're playing together again.
Yeah, well, he's gotten to be very professional. And back in the day, you know, you didn't know if we were going to show up or any of it. But now, you know, he's punctual and he knows what he's doing. And it's not like you're not getting a show that is spontaneous, because you are. But he's got it, you know, he's got it down. And so it's fine. You know, we know how to work together, so it's all good.
So there's not as much sex and drugs and rock and roll?
Just the odd Aleve and, you know, Advil, you know, that sort of thing.
We did a show one time at a festival in Europe with Iggy, you know, playing.
Yeah.
And has he ever done anything like this? He walked out on stage right after Weezer had played, and he'd seen him. And after like 10, 15 minutes into the show, he goes, "How'd you guys like Weezer?" Everybody, woo! He's like, "Fuck this shit!" Just throws the mic down. Into the show.
That was it.
That was it. If you like Weezer, I'm not playing to you. Fuck you guys. And the band's just like, da, da, da. Oh well. Walk off stage.
Well,
That was amazing. That was amazing.
he still stage dives, though, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Iggy?
yeah. And you got to ask yourself, at 66 years old, would you do that? You know, I mean, that is unbelievable. In some ways, he really is a kind of a superhuman person, because, I mean, believe me, after the show, he's licking his wounds, but he does that stuff. And,
He's full on.
No
joke.
It definitely is no joke.
When you're playing, you probably can't even watch what he's doing. I mean, the songs are so fast.
Yeah, no, I'm paying attention to keeping the band together, and you know, that's always been the kind of the deal with him, is he, you know, just let him rip. You know, he'll do his thing, and the band does its thing. Yeah.
And if he gets knocked out, it happens.
You know, shit happens.
So you come back into the band, and it's like it's never ended, you know.
Yeah, we pick
Totally
up,
cool.
we pick up, you know, but the only difference is people like us now.
Yeah.
You know, there's
An audience.
yeah.
That helps.
So what is that like to now play these songs that you wrote, you know, 30, 40 years ago that, you know, 1,000 people saw and maybe were high and didn't know all the words or whatever, and now you have like these insane crowds of people who know all the words and sing along and bounce along with them?
No, it's extremely gratifying, and you know, it's a vindication of our original purpose, is what it is, and so, you know, here we are, we're all in our 60s, you know, kind of doing a few victory laps at the end of the deal, but you know, it's great, you know, and I tell you, we got, you know, I know this may be hard for you to believe sitting here today, and looking at me, but we aren't sex stars, you know, but yet we have 20-something people, you know, out there. That's our audience now. And so I have a theory, and the theory is that, you know, when we were young, these English guys would come over, you know, blues players, the Cream and Jeff Beck and everything, and we would listen to them and think how cool they were. But then we'd figure out, you know what? These aren't the real guys. These guys are the real guys, and we start going to see them. And I think we're like the old blues guys of the punk world, you know. We're kind of, they caught on to that's who we are, and so they come see us.
You guys weren't wrong. You were
we
right.
weren't, we weren't
Right.
wrong.
Right about everything.
It just took the world
Right.
some time to catch up. Here's one of your bigger fans here. Who is this guy?
Oh, that's Prince Albert. He of Monaco. So we got to play the first show ever on the Palace grounds in Monaco a couple of years ago, and that was a hoot because that's the summer house of Grace Kelly. So she had decorated the entire house, and we got the full-on treatment and stuff. And yeah, that was a blast.
And here's another shot. This is what happens when you become a rock star. You get your own figurine.
Yeah.
Now, does this play music?
It does. It plays. You push the button, and this nondescript stuff comes flying out. And the reason is they didn't want to pay any royalties, and so
Oh, nice.
so they took a live clip out of, I think it was actually the Raw Power solo, but they took the clip that they take. You're just like, what? Where is that from? But that's fine. It's still me.
And this is what are we looking at here? What's this?
Yeah, just recently I was deeply honored to receive the Engineering Hall of Fame award at my college, and so I got. I think I'm the only guy with a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and an Engineering Hall of Fame, maybe in the world. But,
From juvenile delinquent.
so we're gonna have to take some questions and then do this guitar thing pretty
Yeah.
quick.
Okay, great. So we have time for a few questions here from the audience for James and Buzz. Go ahead and raise your hand. We have people with mics walking around here.
Maybe we should ask them questions.
Yeah. While you're formulating your question in your head, this is James and Carolyn Wonderland.
Yeah,
Austin here.
I'm doing a whole album, new album, which is actually it's a bunch of material that we recorded right after Raw Power because we still had a record deal with Columbia, and so we thought they were going to pick it up and we would do those tracks. So we toured against them, but the record company declined to renew the record deal. And so the material just is out there in the form of live bootlegs. No, it was never recorded. And the Stooges took 2014 off of touring, so I figured I got the free time. I want to go back and record those songs properly. And the first singer I got was Carolyn Wonderland, who is a phenomenal singer. And the way I found her is I was talking to my wife, and we said, you know what, this song needs Janis Joplin, and we figured out that she wasn't available. But so we went looking for somebody who could sing like that, and I had a lot of trouble finding somebody, and finally my friend Michael Adams from the Cobra Seas sent me a YouTube and link, and that was Carolyn, and I said, that's her. So anyway, we're bringing out a single on Record Store Day. It's called Open Up and Bleed, and you got to get it if you can. Anyway, the album will be out in the fall. It's called Relict. It doesn't have Iggy on it at the moment, but I've offered him to sing on it if he wants to. And, it sounds great, so we're having a great time with it.
There's a question down here.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
I better do.
Let's
Go
have
ahead,
this
take that
one question here. Go ahead.
I was
Make
just
it
gonna-
short and sweet.
It's
Beautiful.
for Buzz. Of all the Melvins albums, because there are many, which was your favorite to work on?
I have no idea. Maybe the Stag record.
Stag? Awesome.
All right.
I don't know why.
Okay. So James is going to do something here.
Yeah, I've done this once before, but I'm adding a new song to it. I want to deconstruct a couple of Stooges songs for you, because the diatonic music scale only has really 7 notes in it. It's the Sound of Music, right? And that's not a lot of notes. And so then you got the pentatonic scale, which is, you know, the rock and blues scale. You know, you're just, you know, there's 5 notes in that. And that's what most people use. And so, you know, the chances of you reusing somebody else's notes are pretty high. And in fact, the chances of them reusing somebody before you is very high too. So it's kind of a funny, you know, thing. How do you make a riff? You know, it's like, how do you make one that's interesting? Because they've all, you know, they're all using the same 5 notes. And it's all the little nuanced stuff. And then there's also the sort of influences that you may not even be like aware of or conscious of when you do it. So I just thought I'd break a couple of them out for you just to give you an idea. So how many of you know the song Shake Appeal from Raw Power? Pretty good, pretty good. So, you know, it goes. Right? So I figured I'm going through that and going. And I figured I just happened to play this instead of this. And that's like, that's not even a whole note, that's a half step. And all of a sudden I understand it. It's that's the theme from The Lone Ranger. So I'm like going, okay, well, you know, that's like going to an analyst for 5 years and he tells you, you love your mother. I know I love my mother. You know, I love The Lone Ranger. But, you know, so I didn't realize 40 years later I would grow up and rip off The Lone Ranger, you know. But the thing is that turns out he ripped off Rossini from the William Tell Overture. So that all works out. That's okay. And then on Search and Destroy, I had a couple of revelations. You know, that song was written in the Vietnam War era, and the genesis of that really was that I was in rehearsal with the other guys. And, you know, when you're in a band, you have to entertain each other. And so I sort of was screwing around like a machine gun and was going, you know, like to the guys. And they kind of liked it. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll work that up a little bit. So I came up with the, you know, wait a minute. Right, so that's Search and Destroy. And so in doing these exercises, I started thinking, well, wait a minute. So this part, you know, it's kind of like. Walk, Don't Run from the Venturers. And I'm like, well, okay, I was influenced by surf music, yeah, I'll admit it. And so then I started playing the, you know, piece, and I'm going, okay, let me transpose for ease of demonstration. So then I'm going. So okay, well that's not good, and then I went on and really got to the root of the origins of Search and Destroy, and that's that the rhythm. It's the rhythm many times that distinguishes things, and so I came up with, you know. Well, guess what? That's a conga line dance. So you're going like, right? So I just leave you with this. The origin of Search and Destroy, the anthem of punk rock, is the bunny hop.
All right. So that's all the time we have. Sorry we couldn't get to some more questions, but we got to hear the bunny hop. So James Williamson, Buzz Osborne, IEEE, thank you.